recorded?
No, we're far too posh for that. We have like a really old grand English accent, you know, from aristocracy.
Oh, okay. Well, I see. So I didn't get to have that.
Right, we're now live, and we're going to let everybody in. Here we go.
All right.
All righty.
Open the doors.
The doors are open. Oh yeah, people are starting to join. Welcome everyone.
Hi everyone.
Morning, folks.
Aravind, Nathan, Paul, Ricardo, Brendan, Aravind, Glenn. Hey guys. How you doing?
So is there something where we can see everyone?
So we're on the webinar version of Zoom. So yeah, we're literally sort of talking heads to the audience that are sitting there invisibly.
We will at the end. We will at the end. It gets a bit unruly, you know. There's some real unruly characters in this list, you know. Jeez. No, we'll,
and on the panel, I think.
We'll promote everybody to a panelist so they can share.
Mike, you're lucky that we're even fully clothed. Like, this is unusual for us. This is out of respect to you. We didn't know if you would be comfortable with our usual modus operandi, you know.
I thought the memo was that all tops come off at 8 o'clock. That was my.
Yeah, well, we're still pre-watershed, so we'll stay on the safe side for now. But like, all bets are off once it's 8 a.m. You know.
All right, I'm standing by.
All right. Well, now that we've got attendees in, we might as well get started, eh? So, welcome everyone. Welcome to Morning Startup once again online from our beautiful home offices or virtual riffs. If you haven't been before, Morning Startup is all about talking about what's happening in Perth startup world and hopefully helping you get your startup off the ground. Sorry, dry throat. My name is Scott Glue. I'm one of the organizers and founders of Morning Startup, here with Dave Newman and Robbie Nolan as well. And today we have Mike Kyriacou. Hopefully I'm not butchering your last name there, Mike.
Yeah, you got your 90% there. Kyriacou.
Kyriacou. Okay, thanks for that. So yeah, Mike is going to talk to us a little bit on about generalized positive deviance. And he runs a course at UC Berkeley on applied AI. So this is going to be a condensed version of that talk. There's going to be a whole lot of, I don't know, I've never heard of this before. So this is completely new for me. So it's going to be kind of cool about what I can pull out of this to apply to my own startup to find opportunities that I just might not have seen before and thinking about things in a different way. So I'm pretty excited about this. But before we get going, we've got a couple of things to do. So introductions and shameless plugs.
Yes.
Dave, do you want to give everyone the lay of the land on that?
Yeah, so if you've got something you want to, if you're new to Morning Startup and you've just found us, then normally we get you to stand up and introduce yourselves. However, we have this beautiful tech thing called Q&A or chat. If you could just whack your stuff in there. Hi, Trent, good to see you here. Hi, Brendan. Stick yourself in there. And if you want a shameless plug, for example, if you want to just let everybody know what you're doing in the ecosystem, then again, put it into here and we will give you that shameless plug for you. And hopefully, like Scott with Mike's surname, we won't butcher it. So yes. We've also got a poll. I'm going to start a poll towards the end here. So there's a few questions we'd love to ask you guys and girls towards the end of this presentation. If you get a chance, I will trigger it at the end of Mike during Q&A. So stay with us through the duration.
Brilliant, brilliant. All right. Hey, Robbie, you want to do an ammo plug?
Ammo plug, yeah. I'm absolutely over the moon with ammo at the moment because I got this beautiful hat. It's merch that's going to keep me guarded from the sun, the winter sun that even still seems to burn my my Irish head. We have no protection whatsoever. Cam and the team have been long time participants and supporters of the startup community here in Perth. What they don't know about marketing probably isn't worth knowing. Like, they are the go-to resource. Growth hacking, anything that's going to help you kind of grow your startup from that idea stage to scale stage and so on. They also have a Weird Growth podcast. If you go to ammo.marketing, you'll find all the details on that. So thanks very much, Cam and the team, for your long-standing support. And yeah, go to ammo.marketing and check out their podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. You are awesome. I'll take Beecham Group. So thank you again to Glenn at Beecham Group and the team. If you haven't heard of them, they're a boutique recruitment company here in Perth. So if you are looking to recruit some exceptional talent, or maybe you are some exceptional talent and you need a gig, then hit up Glenn and the guys at Beecham Group and they will sort you out. So thank you very much to Beecham Group and the team for helping us take Morning Startup online and helping us out with the costs for just running this. That's awesome.
And if you haven't noticed, we are, as the organisers of Morning Startup, we do love merch. Just a big shout out to Glenn. When I do drink a bottle of bologna after 12 on most weekdays. Beecham Group here to help for that. So yeah, thank you for the merch and thank you for the hat.
Absolutely. Yeah, keep the merch coming. I don't have any Beecham Group merch. What's going on, Glenn?
So you missed out on all the stubbies. I'll have to lend you. I've got quite a few of these.
It was quite a collector's item for a time. Like they're in limited, very select homes. Only the real elite have them.
Yeah, I hear they're going on eBay for quite a lot of money these days.
Yeah, and I've nothing to do with the sale of Beecham Group merchandise on eBay, just to state that for the record.
It's cool. I know where Glenn lives. I'm going to hunt him down and get myself some merch. All right, Dave, take it away.
Do this. Right, so I'm going to do two together. So if you are looking for some coverage or you've got some news you want to share, then check out Business News. If you email Business News, they will give you a quarter page spread about your startup and what you're doing. And more importantly, to Charlie Gillingham, Patrick and co over at Startup News, every Friday, if you haven't subscribed, you need to get on that and subscribe to their newsletter telling you what's cool and what's not in what's happening in the WA ecosystem. Super informative, always interesting to kind of keep up to date with what's happening. Let's do TechBoard. So again, similar, if you've not claimed your profile yet, get across to TechBoard, claim your profile. TechBoard's a great platform for basically getting some information out, again, to the wider audience. Peter from TechBoard normally is in person. I'm not sure if he's tuning into these podcasts or these webinars, but yeah, no, go to techboard.com.au and claim your profile. Let's do niche. Feel free to jump in, boys, if you want to do it. Leave me hanging.
So I'm typing in the chat.
So so niche interview. So Jürgen and the team there. If you, the reason we put niche in there is niche normally records a lot of the sessions. Jürgen was on a few weeks back talking about low code, no code, but there is lots and lots of content on there where we've had some great presenters come and present, and basically Jürgen has filmed it all, and it's all up there, free content to consume. And Voltage Espresso, I can't wait to get back to Riff when we basically can go across and get a proper cup of coffee. If you are in the city, make sure you go across to Voltage, which is the opposite Riff. And like I said, normally there is a Morning Startup discount if you mention the name Morning Startup, but at this point in time and given everything that's going on, don't ask, just pay for full price and ask for two. And last but not least, I see that Callie is on board and a few others. To Space Cubes, we couldn't do this without Space Cubes. Well, so this great backdrop behind me is the lovely place of Riff, and obviously you've got Flux up the road. But if you are looking for a co-working space or a desk or an event space, then check out Space Cubes.
Good job.
Hit that button.
Right. Nice one. Okay, so announcements. Just hunting through the chat. So it's great to see some people joining in from Texas. Wow. G'day. What else have we got? Anyone? Australia will be running a free webinar, Lithium and Hydrogen Zero Emission Innovation Summit. Peter Kasperzak, I'm butchering another last name now. Thanks for that. If you've got any URLs or sign up links, put them in the chat as well. That'd be great. John Clements says www.dynamic-changesolution.com. Thanks for joining us.
Maybe
check that out.
Okay, cool. If there's any other announcements, feel free to stick it in the chat there, and we'll try and get it out to people.
Yep. Trent Wheeler says he started a podcast YouTube channel, so check that out at moderncorporateleader.com. Awesome.
Brilliant. Okie dokie. Like I said, I don't know anything else going on. Robbie, you're kind of like the oracle when it comes to events that's happening. Do you know of anything that's going on?
They're all private, exclusive, like online poker events, to be honest. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I was going to ask if what's going on in terms of like open stuff for the community, because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on with Plus A program at the moment. Is there anything that people are aware of in terms of stuff that we can all join in that's locally based content? Share the links or the details on the chat, please.
Brilliant.
Oh, and eGroup. Thanks, Trent. eGroup is an amazing group. It predates Morning Startup. They've got speakers once a month held in Subiaco. So go to egroup.org.au and check out what's going on at eGroup.
Perfect. Okay, hit the button.
Right. The button. Whoa, too many buttons. Okay, we are Morning Startup on all the things. So go to meetup.com. That's sort of our, where we put up all the new talks and everything. contact@morningstartup.com is our email address if you're interested in presenting here one day or you want a talk that we should put on. And we've also got a Slack channel, Facebook group, and Twitter. So get in touch on all the things. And perthstartup.com.au is a Slack channel for Perth entrepreneurs. So get on that and have a chinwag with other startup folk in Perth. We'd love to have you there.
Can we just confirm the rumors that Dave is not starting a Morning Startup TikTok channel? Just to confirm. Well, he has potential. Just confirm to everyone, he won't be. There won't be an official Morning Startup TikTok channel anytime soon.
No, it wouldn't have met the rating for it, unfortunately. It would have been explicit.
That would be amazing. Okay. Well, without further ado, I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We'll pass over to Mike to do, if I can.
All right.
Find the button to stop sharing my screen. Come on, Zoom. Where are you? Zoom.
I can stop your
There it is. Stop share. Cool. All right.
All right.
Such a pro. So yeah, thank you again to Mike, who's again going to take us through a very condensed version of his talk from UC Berkeley on applied AI and tell us all about generalized positive deviance. So yeah, I'll hand over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Scott. Let me just launch where we are here. Hopefully it's the right screen. There we are. Well, it's great to see lots of friends locally as well as around the world. We actually have one of the world's leading practitioners in positive deviance, Dr. Arvind Singhal, who's joining us from Texas right now. So just as Scott made a pretty good attempt with my name, I'm making a pretty good attempt with positive deviance. So if you hear someone say "oh" or something, then it could be Arvind, but we're a positive community. Okay, so this is an 8-week, 16-hour course that I'm going to try and condense into half an hour. Let's just see how we go. So, so a bit of background. Hold on, where are we? Okay, a bit of background about myself. I'm originally from Perth, Western Australia. I've been starting and advising companies for most of this century, which is an odd thing to say. I'm also, I've been an investor and advisor and continue to be. I've been involved in a lot of ventures here and obviously internationally eventually. Early on, one of the items I did was companies I was involved with was electroacoustics, which I bought and transformed to a product company, which became the market leader, and that resulted in a sale. Following that, I was selected for the Silicon Valley Immersion Program, which led to me working for a Silicon Valley venture fund called Selby Ventures, right at the time when the bottom just fell out of the economy. and you could almost see the blood running in the streets. A bit like now, I suppose, in terms of the devastation of the 2009. And that was interesting to figure out which companies should survive and shouldn't, and why. And we saw all number of issues, and even superstars being formed and so on at that point. So it was a pretty instructive time. So after that, I ended up advising a lot of different funds in the Valley and accelerators, universities, and obviously startups, which led to me, among other things, meeting with the head of the engineering entrepreneurship department at Berkeley, which I'll come to in a second. So a few years ago, I started a company called Sutardja Labs in the Valley, which is still going. It's actually headed up by the ex-CEO of American Express Bank in Europe. And basically, it's applying machine learning to company analysis. And it does that by anomaly detection, which will become relevant in a moment. And I lecture at Berkeley, and I'm going to be involved in, I'm currently involved in a few other things, including another compressed version of this talk that's going to be 18 minutes. So we'll see how that one goes. And just generally, I love connecting the dots. I love connecting people to one another, solution to problem, product to market. Particularly now I've relocated back to Perth. I'm looking for ways, and multiple ways, where I can be a bridge between here and the Valley. And I'm still an advisor for an applied AI fund called Bootstrap Labs in the Valley. And so just keen to find ways that I can help both sides. Okay, so here's what happened. This is the story of generalized positive deviance. So I was on Berkeley campus, and I was visiting Ken Singer, who is the head of the Entrepreneurship Center there. And we caught up for lunch, and he said, so this is me, and this is Ken. And he said, what are you working on at the moment? What's exciting? And I said, well, I have this company called Sutardja Labs. We're doing high dimensional anomaly detection. And he said, well, that's interesting. I've just finished reading this book about positive deviance, where we look for unusual variance in a population and figure out why they're doing it, look for anomalies and figure out what they're doing that's different. So that conversation ended up being a course, because the idea was that you could combine high dimensional anomaly detection with positive deviance. And this is the course here. And so this is the result of this talk today is a compressed version of that. So this is the wisdom of outliers. And something funny is going to happen about the progression of those two ideas, and I'll be talking about that. So first I want to talk, I told you that to tell you this, and that is, this was really the first outcome of positive deviance, the first application of positive deviance, and that is that Jerry and Monique Sternin were two Harvard researchers who were brought into Vietnam during a terrible crisis where there was horrific child malnutrition across the country, particularly in some parts of the country. They were given 6 months and no budget. And they said, look, we don't like you Americans here, and you've got 6 months to prove yourselves or you're gone, and you have no budget. Well, 6 months for international assistance is like this is, you can't even get your phone connected in 6 months. So they needed to figure out what to do. And they said, well, there's no way we can do things the normal way. But they realized that the world leading expert on raising a healthy family in Vietnam, in a Vietnamese village, is a healthy family in a Vietnamese village. And so using just a notebook, they went through and they weighed and measured the height and they measured the height and weight of all of the children, and found that even though there was horrific malnutrition, there was just a few families that had healthy, tall children who had a very good mortality rate. So when they peered further into this, they asked them, they said, what are you doing that's different? And we weren't doing anything that was different. So when they actually observed it, what they found was that unconsciously, they were picking up little crustaceans in the rice and not throwing them out and just cooking them. And that was enough for there to be protein. They also weren't throwing out the leaves, which everyone else was doing, just eating rice. They just unconsciously cooked that with everything else. And that plus a regular washing of hands, those two simple things that all families in the Vietnamese villages had access to, was sufficient to ultimately save millions of children's lives from that one observation. So anyway, they did this within 6 months. It was a very big deal. And this was really the beginning of positive deviance having an impact. Now, I want to talk about the other extreme. This isn't saving children's lives. This is actually Goldman Sachs wealth management, which it sounds a bit like, you know, the smallest violin in the world playing a sad tune just for Goldman Sachs. But what this is just to show that this mindset can be applied in completely diametrically opposed areas. And that is that Goldman Sachs found their wealth management area was suffering quite considerably, and they couldn't figure out why. But when they looked at the data, they thought of applying positive deviance. When they looked at the data, what they found was that there were actually just a few of those wealth management advisors who were like 6 standard deviations beyond everyone else in terms of their sales. And what were they doing that's different? Turns out that they were doing things similar with the crustaceans and leaves. They were doing something that everyone else had access to. They were becoming genuinely interested in their customers, and they're actually being invited to the weddings, and they were actually personally involved. They were genuinely personal friends, which, by the way, it's not by accident that reinforces with Dale Carnegie's principles. You know, the truth should be illuminated in many different ways, and it's clear that these things all align. So it shows that positive deviance can be applied in many different areas. Okay, so some success stories, up to 80% reduction in malnutrition for these Vietnamese villages, touching 2.3 million people. In terms of female trafficking, reduction up to 80%, 81%, including nearly 20,000 at-risk children. Globally, across 41 countries, it's resulted in up to a 50% reduction in child malnutrition. So these are massive, high impact studies here. 50% childhood retention, and in the US, 3 hospitals have had a 60% reduction in the transmission of antibiotics. I mean, this is just a sampling. So positive deviance has been an incredible success. So why do these organizations throw out the rule book? Well, they don't, organizations or people, I should say. Well, these people or individuals who are actually the original deviants who are doing things differently, they don't know or care about the rules. They just have a healthy disregard for authority. I don't care, I'm going to do it my way. Or they have an unhealthy disregard for authority. They just try to break things. These are negative deviants, by the way. Or they just try to do something dodgy. Or the old rules don't work, but they care really deeply about the outcome. So a really nice way of summarizing this is William Gibson, who coined the phrase cyberspace, who says the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed, which sums up positive deviance, I suppose, in just 10 words or less. So here's the process, and I don't want to start talking through involved tables, other than to say that the traditional approach is to overlook outliers. But what you can see here is that there is information contained in those outliers that can have massive impact. It's not focusing on the failing norm, it's to understand what is working. It's not a compulsory, you must all participate in this, it's completely opt-in, otherwise you just don't get that buy-in. And it results in, instead of the community saying that's just the way it is, they're saying people just like me are able to affect this change. Okay, so here's the process. So we define what the problem is, and by the way, this should start to look familiar. We determine what those deviants are, and we discover why they are deviating. Remember, the deviants in the Vietnamese case actually didn't realize that they were deviants. They said, we're doing everything exactly the same as everyone. I don't know what it is, it's luck. Because they were unconsciously making those differences. We design a solution that can work for everyone, and then we monitor it. Notice that so many things in the world that are highly effective have a feedback loop. I don't think that's by accident. whenever we see, whether it's lean startup, whether it's different sales models, whether it's everything that we've ever seen, including thermostats and control systems, things that become successful have a feedback loop built into them. And I don't think that's an accident. Okay, so here's the problem. Positive deviance, like what we've just seen, require field notes, small data, where you are measuring these children have this weight, this child has that weight and height, that child has that weight and height. That's what you might call small data. And if I'm going to teach this course at Berkeley, then I want to try and apply my high dimensional anomaly detection, big data, 1 million plus lines, where we're trying to find I'm used to 200 dimensions and millions of lines of data. These aren't compatible. And so this was a realization last year that, is there a way maybe that we can combine this? And it turns out that we might assume that there's a generalized positive deviance that's actually an nth degree of data, where the classical positive deviance is just a special case. I like almost a low data case. But if you're dealing with high data, a great degree of data, you can't necessarily touch every line, but you can actually affect massive dimensionality reduction to boil down the essence of what's going on and then go and question those deviants. And that is the basis of generalized positive deviance, which I claim, and which what we're defining is that the classic positive deviance is just a special case. Okay, so what does that look like? It looks exactly the same, except when we design the solutions, we're either, that's where we monitor it, we either positively affect lives, or we use this to uncover breakthroughs or create a venture. And that's a generalized area where we're either affecting lives, science, or venture. And our talk is actually, with the remaining time that we have, we'll be talking about the green areas, because positive deviance can be found and can be leveraged to uncover these truths that are hiding in plain sight in front of us. So what happens when we go down this rabbit hole? Well, now if this was a group, I'd say, who's seen a box plot before? And I'm not going to take that poll right now. Presumably, we've all seen a box plot, and that's fine. We can take comfort in it. We've seen it 1 million times, and this is what it looks like. Actually, what we've done to make the box plot a reality is we had to take away these anomalies so it kind of converges nicely. Otherwise, it throws the box plot out completely. But wait a second. What are those 4 blue dots? Because sometimes contained in those 4 blue dots that we have to throw out to make the data look nice, some of those are going to be irrelevant or errors or issues. But there can be insight behind those. And that is the basis of what we're talking about. So this is a great quote by Isaac Asimov that said, the most exciting phrase to hear in science, with the one that heralds new discoveries, is not eureka, I have found it, but that's funny. And that is the basis for what we're talking about here. Now, presumably, these gentlemen here. So at the turn of the last century, everything was solved. We knew everything there was to know about in physics, and we were so happy and satiated because Newton said that the relative motion is completely known when you know 2 different velocities. And then unbeknownst to everyone, Maxwell said, there's a speed of light and it's constant. And these two, no one realized. Everyone thought everything was fine. It was all nicely solved. But these are diametrically opposite. You can't have something that varies with velocity and something that's invariant. And it took Einstein to actually look and see what everyone was ignoring. And that is that, well, the general theory of relativity combines these in a known way. Similarly, Owens, this man who's looking very proud of himself, and rightly so, even though his name should actually be much better known. He was actually working over the summer. He had a graduate student just measure the temperature and resistivity as the temperature went down in a coil. And his assistant said, oh, that's funny. He said, what is it? He said, oh, don't worry. He said, no, tell me what's funny. because the resistance completely collapsed at a certain temperature. And he had just discovered superconductivity. I don't think that he was the first person to notice that, but people ignored it. Oh, that's a funny blip. I'm going to ignore that. Contained in that blip was a Nobel Prize. Obviously, contained in what Einstein saw was also a Nobel Prize. So we can be biased by these anomalies. Now, I'm not going to do too many physics examples, thankfully, but this is the equation for gravity. And for a long time, no one knew what G was. We couldn't understand it. And so there were successive measurements. And you can see here, this is the 2 standard deviations. And people were trying to measure successively as the years went on where those measurements were, like what the actual measurement of G was. And actually, they had no idea. They were all over the place. Now, in the end, this is, so as you can see, there's been many attempts to find G. In the end, it's here. So if you have a look at, and I actually, can you see my pointer here? I'm not sure if you can see.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, yep, we can see your pointer.
Yeah. All right. So you can see here with the first example, it was, the reality was actually anomaly. And that kind of biased everyone else. If you look at where the mean was with everyone else's, it biased everyone else's measurement. So this is what happens where we're unconsciously ignoring anomalies. So one other example here, this is, I'm probably going to butcher these guys' names. This is Penzias and Wilson, who had this annoying, they were trying to measure a telescope. They were finding this annoying fuzz. And they thought it was the sensors, so they cleaned the sensors, they cleaned out the satellite, they cleaned out everything, that the satellite dish. Nothing they could do could reduce that sound. And it turned out that what they'd actually discovered was the background radiation that everyone was ignoring because they thought that it was something to do with sensors. Oh, there's always a buzz, don't worry about that. Another Nobel Prize. So anyway, so I'm, without laboring the point, I think I don't want to take too long on this, but we never could have it would have been hard to, it would have been easy to ignore Abraham Lincoln with a life of continual back-to-back endless failures, right? He ended up being the greatest, arguably one of the greatest presidents, except for the current one, just kidding. Okay, so everyone was ignoring the McDonald brothers, who seemed to be doing very well. But this guy, Ray Kroc, who was just a shake salesman, and the actor who plays him there, Michael Keating, he was just he was a 51-year-old milkshake machine salesman who saw what everyone else was ignoring, and that is that these guys had something really special, and the rest is history. Similarly, these people would have been very hard to ignore, and again, this is meant to be interactive, and I could ask who knows who these lovely gentlemen are, and it's actually Microsoft, and it's, again, it comes back to the ignoring of anomalies. So this is someone I know personally. This is Dr. Uwe Bergman, who is also doing something that is applying some extremely advanced data to do something that no one else is looking at. And that is, no one thinks that it's possible to measure the effect of, to measure the effect of photosynthesis and how it actually works. And he's actually trying to crack this at the quantum level. Anyway, I don't want to label the point. I'm not going to talk about this or this. But if you want to understand right now with something in your pocket, what is it that we are ignoring, to just throw your keys up and catch them, and to understand an equation that governs that takes into account the distance from the Earth's core, that doesn't exist yet. We're ignoring it because we say it's impossible, and even rocket science has to be numeric because of it. So it doesn't take long to find something that people are ignoring. Okay, so there's a criteria we have to use to apply this. Now, how are we going, Scott, in terms of timing, just so I can know how to pace this?
So far, so good. Another 20 minutes. 20
minutes? Oh, that's good. All right. So some criteria. How do we actually know if we have something we can apply a positive deviance to? The problem can't be exclusively technical. in terms of finding this. So the problem has to be intractable in that it hasn't, other solutions haven't worked, and there needs to be local commitment in terms if this is something social. So now we're just going to jump straight into actually determining these deviants. So what does that look like? So one is you want to prepare your data. By the way, contained in that, and anyone who's done data science knows, I've just glossed over 80% of all data work because most of it is actually preparing the data. After that, it's a lot easier. So we prepare the data. It's like a cooking show where they say, here's something we prepared earlier. We prepare the data, and then we apply what we're going to see soon to reduce the data set, reduce the dimensionality as much as possible. Then we measure the deviations, and then we interpret it somehow. Okay. Does it have to be high dimensional? No, it doesn't. Einstein had this great quote: "Things should be as simple as possible, but not simpler." If you can do it in if you can find the deviation in 1D, that's fine. So a way we can do this is we just take the z-score, which is just the number of standard deviations, and this is what's normal, and this is abnormal, and what's going on here. So once we get into more dimension, more features that we want to understand in terms of how they deviate and what we're trying to optimize for, we can't just view this in one dimension. There's a few different ways of doing this, and one of these is principal component analysis, which basically takes your data set in n dimensions and effectively rotates it in such a way that it aligns it on the axes where it varies the most. So it just takes it from whatever your data was to some new axes where it's actually pointing out where the greatest variation is, and that's what we're seeing here. So I could go into a lot more detail about how this works, but here's a visual. So here's your 3D data set, and we can see here that there's a variation, but when we apply principal component analysis, we actually split it into the principal components so we can really see of this data set which are actually the areas that really vary, because that's what I care about. It could be there's 100 dimensions, but really most of that variation is in 2, and we want to know that. Now, if that happens, we're very lucky, and that's really nice. But usually what happens is you'll only get about 60% of variations in about 3 of those dimensions. And then beyond 3, we can't see them, right? Unless you use color, and then it's 4. And then beyond that, you can't really do anything. And it's an impossibility. But then enter Geoffrey Hinton, the inventor of deep learning, who also created a solution to this, and it's called the t-SNE function. And he's done the impossible. So yeah, PCA projections, they don't preserve this high dimensional proximity, but he solved it in a way that it's quite useful, not always useful. And it preserves this high dimensional proximity and to the nth level. And here's how this is what it looks like. And here's how he does it. So for every point, and there could be millions of these, you project it to a random point onto a 2D plane, and you jiggle, and then for those successive points, you jiggle it a little bit closer or a little bit further, depending on how close it is in high dimensional space. And you keep on doing this, and you iterate and iterate, and they all of these points just jiggle around like they're little ants. They move a little bit further away and a little bit further, closer and further away, like they have their own little gravitational pull. And eventually, because of this, and it's a numerical solution, so it's not every time you run it, you get a different shape, right? Because it's random. But what it does is it actually allows very high dimensional clusters to make themselves revealed to us. By the way, sometimes you have to run it a few times to actually see something useful. But it is very powerful for us to understand what's close and what's not close. Now, in the process of doing this, and this is beyond the scope, myself and others at Berkeley have found other ways of doing this that doesn't involve loss. And I was meant to be presenting this at a conference, at an IEEE conference in Northern Italy in April. It was cancelled. So that's going to have to wait, but watch this space. Okay, and we repeat this for all of these solutions. Okay, so once we have these, once we've identified these, what does the discovery process look like? So once we've got this data, the big thing you always want to know with data is, so what? Like, what is the story behind it? Why is it an anomaly? And so, all right, so we have the data. Now we want to analyze it. We want to glean some insights. And because we're in the real world and nothing is perfect, we then have a conversation with those deviants to understand why. Whether it's, is it a VC firm that we're looking to see if it's exceptionally strong, or is it an athlete? Is it someone who's been financially successful, who grew up in a poor neighborhood? Whoever they are, whether it's an organization or a person, or a wealth management company, or a family in Vietnam, we want to go through and have a conversation from the numerical insights. And then that can then feed back. It could be that we're ignoring something, or we've taken something into account that's actually irrelevant. And then we interpret those results. Okay, and Eric Ries, who I'm sure everyone here knows, I mean, who's heard of, says, metrics are people too. And that summarizes this really, really well. But whatever happened, whatever is coming from that data, someone produced it. It's particularly true with online data, and in many cases, it's the case. What is going on? Whatever has happened, someone or something produced it. So what is the story behind it? Now, when we do this, we have to look for true but useless. So you have typical behaviors, and then you have basically true but useless is that, for instance, if we're looking to see which individuals have been able to be financially successful who grew up in a poor New York neighborhood, say, and it just happens that they all wear baseball caps on backwards. That might be true, but it's actually useless, right? Wearing hats is not part of it. So you want to be able to eliminate true but useless features. That's a kind of 10 words or less version of true but useless. But it's very important to eliminate these true but useless. And that's part of your feedback loop. So, and here's why there's limits to what I was saying we can glean from data. And that is, the real world is far more nuanced than the data will show. And this is what we found with Stratica Labs. You can only interpret so much from a company's financials. Then you actually have to go and say, why is it that your rental has suddenly decreased by half? Like, you can't get the why just from the numbers. It becomes a question. There's only so much you can get. It could be that you've missed some features. You have to go back and actually use other dimensions. Even if you capture everything, absolutely everything, it's unlikely to capture why. So you need to consult with everyone. Okay. And so how does this help optimize our time? If we've really distilled what those dimensions are, why is that useful for us if we're talking to a person? How do we connect that back? And it's this: you don't have 100 hours to talk to these deviants. Everyone's time is scarce, and so you've only got a certain amount of time to really get to them and ask those questions. So by understanding what those driving features and factors are, you can get to the right questions faster, basically. It also means that you can help steer the conversation, because people who are involved in their world, and it doesn't matter what field you're in, you're being driven by these tacit assumptions and dogma. And so the data can help you peer through and ask those right questions. Jeff Bezos has this fantastic quote, which needs to be everywhere over the internet and just isn't. And he says, this is what he says in his board meetings: if this is a decision based on opinions, then my opinion wins. However, data beats opinion, so bring data. And actually, as founders and CEOs, this is actually great advice for us to follow. And the key is that data trumps opinion every single time. Okay, I've talked about data. So in a way, you can take features and you can split these into behavior and behavioral features and outcome features. Outcome features would be our company's performance over time, the thing that you're trying to optimize, or it could be the health of children in Vietnam, or the sales performance of Goldman Sachs wealth managers. Okay, and that could be multiple dimensions or one dimension. And then there's behavioral features, and that is, what are they doing that's different? And as far as that can be quantified. And this matrix can actually help give you feedback to see if what you're providing smacks of reality. And that is, if you're finding that people doing everything that's exactly the same and they're having incredible outcomes, then you're not collecting something correctly, right? That's a sign that's over here that you're including true but useless, something needs to be deleted, or you're missing something. But if there's a group of people who are all doing the same thing and some are massively outperforming, then you're not capturing things correctly. So that's a trigger to go back or ask questions or revisit your data. And you can see here, so if there is anomalous behavior, it either has about the same outcome, then we can ignore that, or it could be a negative deviance or a positive deviance. And so it depends what we're trying to look for there. So what we're looking for is anomalous behavior that actually has breakout outcomes. That just helps. This truth table just helps to clarify what it is that we're trying to go after. Somehow I can't get by without using truth tables for these things. It really does help clarity, provide clarity. Okay, so and now how are we going here for time? We have about 10 more minutes.
Oh, yep, looks good. So we're at 8:20. Yeah, 5-10 minutes, and we'll have some Q&A.
Okay, so I'm going to walk through this quickly, but this is a step through of the dimensionality reduction you can do when all you care about is anomalies. Okay, so if all of our examples are rows and here are all features, now this normally takes a long time to explain, so let's just see how we go. The first thing is we exclude everything that's irrelevant, right? This is our exclusion criteria. So if it's the Vietnam example, we say all we care about is the age under 16, boom, remove rows. Country is Vietnam, remove rows. The region is rural. Home income is less than $3 a day, right? $3 a week, I'm not sure. Anyway, so home income less than a certain criteria. So this is actually very important. So we can remove first all of the rows that are irrelevant to us for our study. So the next thing is, for all of these numerical features, and these will all be distributed in a known way, we want to take the Z-score. Now we're going to have to actually do a PCA or t-SNE to understand if the data is monolithic. Is there a single mean and then it does this, or are there multiple means? In which case you have to do some fancy footwork, and then it's non-standard. But generally speaking, you want to be able to apply Z-scores to each of these. And by Z-scores, I mean you want to know, instead of it being a number, all you care about is the number of standard deviations it differs from the mean. That's all you care about, is a number, the number that is the standard deviations from the mean. Now, once we do this, then we can do our high dimensional or low dimensional anomaly detection to figure out what those outcome features are. And then we know that they are the deviants. Then we can delete everything else. What I just said is an absolute heresy that we're deleting 99% of our data. But you know what? No, we're not. Because really it's encoded. We took the Z-scores of the data. We didn't, so the norm that we just deleted is actually embedded in the statistical information that we've put in those anomalies. And there still could be hundreds or thousands of deviant examples. So now we're going to reduce the dimensions further. So first we're checking for completeness, like I said with that truth table. If all of the behavior is normal and you're seeing breakout differences, then you're not doing something right. You're not capturing everything. So go back and have a conversation, go back and revisit your data. That's a way of telling you that there's a question mark. Okay, so now we should have behavioral features and we're only looking at the deviance. So now we can look at each of these features and say, well, all we care about, we don't care about all the features. We only care about the features where with these deviants, they're doing a different behavior. That means even if we have 100 dimensions of different behavioral features, we can just eliminate all of those that are typical, meaning, plus, from -1 to 1z, right? Or depending what that looks like. You need to really visualize each of these to understand what's typical. But if it's typical, you can just get rid of that. And that actually can result again in a massive dimensionality reduction. So now what you have is only the behaviors that drive breakout success. So we've now been able to take a massive data set with potentially thousands of features, dimensions, and we've been able to distill just the driving behaviors that give rise to deviance. And there are ways that we can plot this. It was orthogonal, there were 90 degrees, but they don't have to be now. So you can use something like this to plot it, and you'll see that they can cluster in different rings. And these are the different ways things can deviate. And there are two different groups, and you can go and talk to them. That's probably a high level there. And I'm sure there's a million questions on that, but that's a pretty quick walkthrough of how to do it. Right. And okay, so we've gone through, and the next is to actually have a conversation. And basically, we want to get the story behind that. And I don't think we need to talk about that. Really, having a conversation is with these deviants is the same. It's the same drivers that leads to customer discovery and rapport building to really understand the need behind the need, the reason behind the reason. Anyway, anyway, so that's that. And okay, do we have about 5 more minutes, Scott? How are we doing there?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so where we are right now, we've actually distilled our insights, and that's really, really valuable. But so far, we've had zero impact in the world. What's missing is to maximize impact. And I want to talk about this gentleman, Leonardo Da Vinci. Fortunately, no physics here, but he did all of these things. His insights transcend, he created insights into human movement, human proportion, topographic anatomy. I'm not going to labor the point, but he produced breakthroughs in all of these areas, but he never published. He never did anything with these. We eventually had to rediscover all of these things after the fact, and only found them later after we'd rediscovered them in notebooks. So he had massive insight, but zero impact, which as a humanist, right, should break our, as humanists, it breaks our heart that what we could have had if only we knew about these things hundreds of years ago. But all of that amazing work, other than inspiring us, he had zero impact. Similarly, Carl Friedrich Gauss had this awful saying, few but ripe. He produced mathematical discoveries that if they were published now, if they had been published, we would be 50 years more advanced in mathematics. We would have had the mathematics of 2070 today. And we don't, right? Because he didn't publish. So we can actually plot, if you want, the insight versus proliferation. That should mean it's a log scale, right? So monks don't proliferate and don't do a lot of new insight. Da Vinci had amazing insight, but didn't proliferate. Gauss, he published a little bit. Einstein had both incredible insight and his ideas were able to proliferate. That's great. Justin Bieber, on the other hand, and I tried to get the most annoying picture I could find of him, had not a lot of insight, to be honest, but oh boy, what proliferation. So, and and then we come to Uber and other unicorns, where what we want as founders is to have, yes, massive insight, but that's not enough. We have to proliferate, otherwise we're nowhere, and we have to obsess about that. So impact is insight times proliferation, and to have impact, insight isn't enough. We have to proliferate, and I think I might leave it there. Other than to say, a normal population with normal behavior, the population achieves normal outcomes. But if we can take that population or our customer base and give them these PD behaviors, the whole population can have breakout outcomes. And I think, okay, let me just move across. So in summarizing, with positive deviance, imagine the impact that we can have. We can positively impact millions of lives. We can transform organizations, lead breakthroughs in science and technology, or build startups that do any or all of the above. And that's the power of general positive deviance. And to end on a quote by this gentleman, if you can see what others cannot see, you can do what others cannot do. And that's it. Any questions?
Amazing work, Mike. Thanks for that. I mean, it's just great to condense an entire course into half an hour. You've done a great job.
Yeah, hopefully it was comprehensible. I'll have to watch the video and see afterwards how, if I was dragging everyone along a bit too fast.
No, all good, all good. And extra bonus points for working in Justin Bieber into a talk about PD and AI. Amazing.
Brilliant.
Okay, so guys, if you've got any questions, please use the Q&A section in Zoom rather than the chat. Then we can click buttons and organize it a bit better. While the questions are coming in, I just have a general question. So me as a startup founder, this is all pretty exciting. I'm just wondering, is there any tips you've got? Do I need to go and hire maths and AI wizards to look at data sets and anomalies and things? Or is there anything available to make this a little bit more accessible to a normal founder with sort of generalized knowledge and background?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the fact is generalized means that, you can, the whole point is to just this is available as a mindset as well. Like I said, it doesn't have to be high dimensional and have a million lines of whichever. The point is that there are incredible opportunities that, I mean, for instance, it could be customers. It could be a particular customer segment of yours that really loves this, and it's not clear because it's in the data. When you average it out, it just looks like there's a certain adoption, but there could be a pocket that's actually going viral. Right, and so it's a matter of mining that and understanding, which you would have access to that, say, with that sort of data, and then just going and talking to them, right? Because using it as a trigger to then talk and have the conversation. So it's really, it's really a mindset that we can follow, and being able to mine it if there's data is very nice and a luxury. But ultimately, it's about seeing what's there with objective eyes, and data can help, and then going further to understand why.
Okay, so like visualization tools and things, is there anything, just think from my own experience, I've mapped all of our customer locations on Google Maps, and I saw, hey, there's a little cluster of our customers in this weird country town in the US. Why is that?
That's funny, right? That's funny,
yeah.
Right? That's exactly the kind of behavior you want to be exhibiting. Okay, yep.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, I was just importing a CSV into Google Maps. Are there any tools out there that you recommend for getting data sets and visualizing them in interesting ways?
Well, yeah, we've been using RapidMiner with mixed success.
Okay.
So yeah, we're still figuring that out, like the best way to visualize that, other than actually using R and other libraries to do that.
RapidMiner. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Mixed success, I'd say.
There's a couple of questions here on the old Q&A. There's one from Paul from Indie Hackers, which is, do you find that the proliferation of false or misleading information is having a detrimental effect on AI results? How do you distinguish the fact between fiction to drive your AI?
And really with this, because it's a feedback loop, all we can do is go in and check against reality.
Okay, good. There's a one. Do you want to take the question there? Was that a question or a statement?
Sure. So there's a Peter says he's doing a 1-800 help me hotline, an AI personalized crisis and suicide prevention hotline. Do you know individuals or AI companies who would be interested in either supporting or collaborating on the 1-800 help me project?
I do know a company. Well, I know an angel investor who is wanting to start or collaborate. This is in the Valley, in this general area. So I can do I can ping them, and if we can do a double opt-in into intro perhaps.
Cool.
So
Okay.
yeah, like
How do people reach you,
offline.
Mike?
Let's see. Probably
Message you from Meetup. You can message you if you're on Meetup. They can message you on Meetup, I think.
Yeah.
Or
All right. That's probably the best way.
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is always a good one.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Any more questions?
We got, is the full talk published anywhere else? Yes, so it's currently on YouTube. If you go to youtube.com/morningstartup, we're currently streaming live, and that will be available forever.
There's a question just come in from Jamie. Where does the need to break out come from? It seems that it maybe we need to think about how to diminish impact at times. So I'll read that again. Where does the need to break out come from? It seems that we maybe need to be thinking about how to diminish impact at times.
Oh, I see. Well, I meant the assumption I was making is it was positive impact. I mean, by the way, positive deviance is being applied right now to COVID-19. Clearly, it should be being applied to climate. I'm sure it is somewhere. Dr. Arvind Singhal, who's on the line right now and with us here, he's applying this right now to COVID-19, and he has connections worldwide, and data sources across all of India and the United States and so on. So it's very active. So it isn't just how do we have massive impact in a negative sense. The point is for it to be a massive positive impact. I should have been more specific there.
Cool. There's a question that's coming from Daryl. Do you foresee another AI winter? And what do you think would be the trigger for it? Can you also explain for those of us that don't know what an AI winter is, what is an AI winter for the less educated?
You mean like in the 80s and 90s when it didn't really work properly?
I have no idea. It's a question from Daryl. Like I'm going, what's an AI winter? Maybe you could write that in the Q&A there or the chat.
Well, you see, there is like it's way hyped right now. Like, but the thing is, it works, and it works in so many applications. It's kind of dumb, right? So deep learning is kind of dumb. It's very empirical, so it will crunch all of this data to do something that maybe you could give it a couple of lines of code and it'll figure out. It can do so it's completely naive. And most deep learning is usually completely naive, and that's going to change, right? And that's some things we're doing actually with Sutardja Labs, is to try and actually use back propagation in ways that make it smarter. Anyway, but the point is, it works, and so I mean, it didn't really work before. So there could be a winter, and it could be, and it's overhyped, but it won't fall that much because cars are driving on the road right now, at least in the US, without drivers, and the chess champions and the Go champions aren't humans anymore. So it's just like science. It's real and it works. So it may be an AI autumn or spring, but it won't be a winter.
Great.
There was another question. Go on, Scott.
I was just going to read the question from Farhad. So how do you choose a set of common and consistent metrics to analyze? And secondly, how do you avoid discarding something important by prematurely deciding something is irrelevant or useless?
Oh, okay. So the second question is great, right? That's where we have that loop that we can check, because if we're finding that with just the same behavior gives rise to breakout outcomes, breakout success, then we know we haven't done something right. So that's kind of a reality check that we, whether we've captured everything. And by the way, it may be that you'll never have the data to capture everything. All you can do is zero in a little bit more. Like the example of the prawns, like there wasn't an AI that was capturing how many prawns and leaves the family put into the soup and stirred, right? That only came when, you can only do so much, whatever you can with the data. And then beyond that, you actually have to go and talk and understand it. So it shouldn't just be about the data side. It actually should be, you use the data to have the right conversations, and then it's a feedback loop, as it would be in any lean endeavor.
There's a question here from, I'm going to guess this is Steve Beckworth. Hi, Steve. Good to see you. Can you recommend a book or paper on the data reduction method?
I can, but that was really the subject of what I was going to teach. That's the paper that I was going to write for the IEEE in Italy, which was cancelled. So it doesn't exist yet, but it will.
Watch this space. I guess again, just use LinkedIn, maybe Steve, and connect with Mike or whatever. And once he's written it, he'll let you know. We've got time possibly for a couple more questions. Could this, a question here from Ashley Aiken, does this or could this help deep learning incorporate insights?
It can, but not forgetting that, oh yes, so it definitely can, because at least before, even without checking, with a person, which you should do, you are at least able to reduce your dimensions, which is a big problem, right? It means that if you have less features in your neural network, then it will converge much faster. And it means you need less data, or it means that you can have greater confidence. The only thing then is that that can then help you when you have a conversation. So it can help, but you still need to have humans in the loop, because most of these things are about hospital outliers that are hospitals, VC fund, like investment funds, startups, companies, families. It all involves humans, so that has to be part of the feedback loop.
All right.
Because it's perfect.
Brendan Murphy, hard question to phrase, but can PD be used to address an issue that most people have but are ignoring through timing? Not sure how to interpret that one, but what is?
But what does timing mean? Because it takes too long, or because it's too early or too late?
Right.
I don't know what is timing
Because
duration.
the market
Or
wouldn't accept it. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good one. Maybe Brendan, you can put something in the chat just to kind of give some clarification into that one. We've got one more. Here you got from Jamie. Does Da Vinci's artwork makes people stop and contemplate? Architecture is about inability rather than occupying. Where does AI and big data fit into this? So you're essentially comparing art and machines.
So is the question, where does AI fit in relation to?
Da Vinci's art makes people stop and contemplate, to think about it. Where does AI and big data fit into this?
Only in how the insights should be used. I mean, I'm just using that to make a point that all of that amazing insight he had, and the analogy is that we can glean from our data, all of that amazing insight that could have changed the world, didn't, you know, and that's not what we want, right? Whatever the insights are that we have, if we want to have an impact, I mean, if we want to just do it, we go, I'm so happy I discovered that, I'm going to go back to sleep now or something. That's separate. But if we want to have impact, then, you know, we have to proliferate it.
Okay,
You know, it's
cool.
not enough to have that. And so that's where the link is. I think is that what the question was asking?
Possibly. I think, as unfortunately, if we're not, which is actually a good segue. So before we get to the segue, there's just a compliment here to you, Mike, from Arvind. So it's just a compliment to Michael. He's grasped the principles of positive deviance and found a way to operationalize to big data and to remove the chaff to expose the kernel. So yes, a compliment.
Oh, I like the analogy.
So, so the segue is, like I say, if we'd have been in person, we could have said, "Hey, can you elaborate a little bit to that question a bit more?" Because of the audience and not using the medium of technology to communicate. So, obviously, with everything opening up in the hopefully not too distant future, or certainly doesn't sound like our borders, but more things are opening up. 100 people in the pub, and the pubs are definitely calling Scott and more so Robbie to say, when are you going to come back? I don't know what that says about. I don't know what that says about Scott and Robbie and their reliance on their wallets for income, but
we have our priorities right.
Exactly. So I'm just going to launch the poll for everybody that's on here. It's just a quick poll, just to say, how are you looking forward to consume morning startups going forwards? And this is not to say that we're not going to go back to Riff. It's just more to kind of get an understanding as to what the feeling of the world is out there. So, okay.
Yeah, I got to say, rolling out of bed closer to 7:30 and jumping on Zoom is nice, but definitely looking forward to getting back to Riff and, you know, elbow bumping, or what was it, Mike? The Star Trek.
It's being suggested.
Hey guys, just quickly, Brendan Murphy has come back and clarified that question he was asking a moment ago in relation to timing. And he's basically stated simply, people don't make wills. So he has a startup that's working on online wills or digital will. People don't make wills because it is not urgent until you die. However, the impact is tens of thousands of people dying interstate, internationally every year, creating massive mess and distress.
Okay. So we've got, yeah, does that give context to Brendan? E.g., like, is there a defining time factor that somebody would look at the data more impactfully?
Right, okay.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I guess, so in that context, you'd want to figure out, okay, who are the people who are looking at their wills, and what is, you know, of those who do their wills early and who are young, say, why did they do them early? You know, like, you know, so it could be actually talking to some of these attorneys who draw the wills up and really understand what is that driving factor that does it. And if you're young and you do it, like, for instance, that's what you want to select for. What is it? What is the trigger that does that? And can that be, you know, then trying to sit down with them and really, you know, try and use that further. And that's not about big data as much as that PD process. I really understand who are these people who are doing it.
It really sounds like, you know, data can help you identify who to go and speak to, but really the insights are going to be gleaned by just getting out of the building, talking to your customers, right, and answering that why.
That's right. That's right. I mean, the data in this context, it can make you ask the questions you never would have thought of answering, asking.
Right.
And also their answers embody this tacit mindset, this dogma that they have. They don't realize, they can't see out of it. But with our data, we can cut through and, you know, probe further and know where and how and so on. And that's why.
Okay, so we've got, out of the 31 people that can vote, we've got 24. So I'm just going to leave it up for another 30 seconds while we talk about the next session in a couple of weeks, Scott. We've got some local celebrities, haven't we?
We do. We have Ian from Hum, who we used to say was a Perth startup, and I think we still can. We can still claim Hum as a Perth-based startup, even though they're now based right where Mike's
you
photo
there.
is there at Berkeley in California. So as part of their move to Silicon Valley, they were helped in that move by Berkeley Skydeck, which is a fund and accelerator based in Berkeley, obviously. They helped Ian and the team at Hum get over there, and they're going to do a presentation in 2 weeks' time on how they can help you as well. So if you are thinking that your audience or your funding or whatever is in the US, then please tune in 2 weeks' time and hear all about Berkeley Skydeck.
Brilliant. Okay. Looking forward to it. Well, the votes are in. They will remain within our knowledge. Thank you very much, everybody. Massive round of applause to Mike. Sorry?
You're not going to share the results?
There's a question I think we can't overlook, and like this could be the most decisive question of the whole.
This is should I sit there and go, that's funny?
Surely there's some deviance in there.
Yeah. Okay, so the results were so 62% of you said that you prefer it online. That's because most of you don't like to roll out of bed and get up early, and the other 38% said that you want it in Riff. So yeah, interesting results, but we are going back to Riff. So it'd be said, but we don't know when. I guess that's more the question. We will work that out. We've got next one is definitely online because it's being hosted online with Skydeck. And after that, I guess we will we'll have that conversation and see where we go.
Indeed.
So,
we'll always stream. I think we'll keep streaming it to YouTube though.
I think so. I think so. So as normally, what I'm doing now is I'm just promoting you all to a panelist so we can see your beautiful faces, because we would normally see this in Space Cubed or Riff. And feel free to turn your cameras on, say hi to everybody, and talk amongst yourselves while I try and do this as quickly and as accurately as possible.
It needs a bulk way of doing it, doesn't it?
It does. Like here's Zoom. Look, you need to be able to just promote everybody to do it. I'm sure there is. I'm probably not doing it correctly, but.
Oh, I just saw we have Ricardo Rodriguez from Berkeley as well. I'll be giving this talk to Ricardo, but half the length again, like 18 minutes or so.
A condensed version.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So Ricardo, look, give me some feedback offline about how we can cut 50% of this.
Absolutely, it's been great. Thank you for having me here.
No worries.
Right, one last person. There we go. Done. Everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you all. Good to see the cameras going on. Like I say, we will see you at the same time in 2 weeks here. Okay?
Thanks very much.
Quick one, Dave.
Great to see you guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Just a quick one, Dave. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go on.
I just wanted to ask, like, the question that's on my mind is, if Sean Connery is a monk, does that make Miss Moneypenny
name of the rose?
Name of the rose.
It was,
Name of the rose. Great movie.
That then.
But if Sean Connery is a monk, does that make Miss Moneypenny some sort of a naughty nun or something?
Yeah. And that will be the subject of my next talk.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Now that you're all alive, does anyone have anything else to share or any comments?
Okay, I just want to mention, Mike, I was the one who asked the question about 1-800-HELP ME.
Yeah.
Look, when you talk about, outreach, you can really reach a lot of people, and it's something that can have tremendous impact, not only in Australia, but United States and other countries. So I really would like to, I sent you an invitation by LinkedIn, so if you could connect, I really would appreciate it.
Sure.
Right. Well, and on that note, I will hit the end meeting for all. See you next week. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
See you in 2 weeks' time, guys.
Yeah.